Welcome back, dear viewer. The hills of Appalachia are full of all manner of ghosts and monsters. But today we are going to travel to southwestern Pennsylvania to talk about an urban legend that I heard many a time growing up. Today, ladies and gentlemen, we are going to be talking about the Green Man. Even though I didn't hear these stories until the late 90s, early 2000s in my community in northern West Virginia, these tales date all the way back to the 1950s and 60s. Every campfire scholar you ask will give you a different origin story for the Green Man. Some will say he was a railroad worker, others a utility line worker, and some even a factory worker. But the one consistent thread is that he was involved in a horrific accident. An accident that left his face horribly disfigured. I've heard that he was a utility worker that one day was shocked and thrown from a power line. A railroad worker that was involved in a horrible electric accident. A factory worker that was splashed by a horrific chemical or acid. And in some instances, just an ordinary man that got too close to downed power lines. Even the fate of the Green Man will differ depending on what schoolyard historian you ask. Some will tell you he died on the spot and his disfigured phantom still haunts the rural roads of southwestern Pennsylvania. Traveling these roads on dark, rainy nights, you might see a figure walking along the side of the road. Do not look in your rearview mirror after you pass this figure, because illuminated by your taillights, you will see the faceless, disfigured phantom of the Green Man. In other tellings, the Green Man survived and was taken to a local hospital. Upon seeing his disfigured face after coming out of a coma, he went into a blind rampage, eventually overpowering hospital staff and escaping into the Pittsburgh suburbs, where he could be hiding in the woods, the abandoned buildings, the old factories, or even the sewers. But the most famous haunt for the Green Man is a tunnel near South Park Township. Many have claimed to see a glowing green apparition in this tunnel that they believe to be the Green Man. For this reason, this tunnel has become a hotspot for paranormal investigators and was even featured on the TV show Scariest Places on Earth. But how much of this urban legend is actually true? In all honesty, practically none of the stories about the Green Man have any truth to them whatsoever, but from a folklore and an urban legend standpoint, the Green Man is a fascinating story because we not just know the origins of the Green Man story, we know the person the stories are based off of, an actual person named Raymond Robinson. Born in 1910 at the age of 8, Raymond was involved in an electrical accident while climbing the Morondo Bridge outside Beaver Falls, Pennsylvania. Less than a year earlier, another boy was electrocuted on the same bridge, but somehow Raymond survived to the surprise of doctors and medical experts. But he did lose both of his eyes, his nose, and his right arm in the accident. As he got older, he would eventually start taking nighttime walks along the rural state route 351. And after several sightings of this faceless nighttime walker, local stories of Charlie No Face began circulating through the communities of southwestern Pennsylvania. Individuals even started going out on nighttime drives looking for Raymond, while several individuals that found him were quite nice and surprised that the stories of a faceless individual had some merit to them. Others were mean and cruel to Raymond. Because of this, Raymond would sometimes dip into the woods whenever he would hear a car approaching, thus adding more to the legend of the disappearing faceless man on the side of the road. Now, some passerbys would eventually become friends with Raymond, and he would visit and talk to them, usually about the weather. He would even allow locals to take pictures with him in exchange for beer and cigarettes. Because of this, Raymond Robinson became a local legend, but would pass away in 1985 at the age of 74. And that's what's so fascinating about the story of the Green Man. Despite passing away in the 1980s, stories of the Green Man would persist and evolve and change over time. I didn't hear about the Green Man until the late 90s, early 2000s. And by then, the story had changed to the Green Man being a boogeyman, a serial killer hiding in the sewers of the Pittsburgh suburbs. It's fascinating to have an urban legend that you definitively know the origins of and can track how it evolved and changed over times, moved to different areas, different communities. The stories about the Green Man I heard in northern West Virginia were wildly different than the tales I heard at Scout Camp in eastern Ohio, and both of those stories were different than the ones being told in the suburbs of Pittsburgh. So next time you hear a ghost story or paranormal encounter or urban legend, before you go dismissing it as just a tall tale, remember the story of the Green Man, and sometimes the truth behind these stories is just as powerful as the stories themselves. That's gonna wrap us up for this time, dear viewer. I hope to talk to you again very, very soon.